Welcome to Serenity with Dr. Reverend Pamela June Banks Anderson. We are continuing a conversation with, under the title of the Reverend and the Rabbi, and we want to share with you before we continue that conversation, the primary mission of Serenity is to share with you information and inspiration. If we are to be and to have peace on earth and goodwill toward all, it must first begin with individuals having peace and goodwill within. Please join me in reciting the prayer for which the show is named. God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. As we continue the conversation, we want to start out by asking Mr. Crone if he would ask his question. Mr. Crone is among our many guests who are with us on location tonight at St. Stephen's Community Church, United Church of Christ from Kehilat Israel Congregation. Mr. Crone.
I wanted to mention the we're talking about changing our attitudes, but first of all, we have to change, I think it has to do with changing public attitudes. I remember when I first came to this country from Nazi Germany, I was struck, I was on the East Coast, I was struck by the level of popular anti-Semitism in this country, which was probably higher than it was in the town I came from in Germany. One of the important differences was it had no public or little public support. Laws were not changed to discriminate. And it made an enormous amount of difference. One of the things also I noticed was the difference in which the Rabbi alluded to it earlier. Germans have treated that period, the Nazi period, and compare it with the way we treat in our public discussion the Civil War and pre-Civil War, which is still celebrated in this country, which still has enormous influence. And we deal with the whole slavery issue with the part of the country that the Confederacy is treated with enormous respect in our public discussion, which I've always found to be totally undeserved. I have some very good friends in Germany. Two in particular. One of them is a minister in the Church of Christ, or used to be. He's retired now. Like so many clergymen in Germany, he made it his mission to write the history of the Jews in the town in which he lived, which goes back to the First Crusade. And being a good German, of course, it's 500 pages long.
He's not German.
Being a good German is about 500 pages long.
Okay.
And his father, he does it as I guess, a form of expiation, because his father was a very active middle-level Nazi official. And he feels the weight of it very acutely, of that inheritance, and so do their children. And there's a feeling of something that needs to be expiated, which is different from the way we treat in this country the memory of slavery. Even the name of slavery, I think, is probably something to take away some of the stings, because slavery is a worldwide problem.
A curious
Then
institution.
the sting of the slavery was not what was of course part of slavery, but the racism that underlay would make the slavery even worse than slavery normally would be. Historically, when you say somebody is a slave all over the world, you haven't said very much. In Egypt, under the Mamluks, the kings were slaves. I just learned, much to my surprise, that in Mississippi it became illegal, unlawful, to manumit a slave.
What?
I didn't know that until really recently.
Oh, you're free.
What? Is that free?
Yes.
And we have still in our society this notion that race is a form of disease. For instance, a president is generally regarded as an African American. He's as white as he is African. But the notion is that if any part of it is African, it infects, there's an infection going on. It's underneath the language. That's so much part of our language that it's very hard to erase. And it takes more than just individual conversion. It takes public action.
So how do we reach the critical mass that was accomplished for the Jewish Holocaust and for slavery? How it became, well, for lack of a better word, acceptable. Is not a very good word. But it became, both institutions became so large that it was hard to deflate them. And it's only been in generations following where in the Hebrew nation and the Jewish nation, the attitude has been no more. And so there's been this concerted effort, just like it is, by the way, in the Torah. Throughout the Torah, the story of Pharaoh's army got drowned in the Red Sea, and the whole idea of the death angel passing the houses that had the blood over the post, and the diseases and curses that came upon Egypt because the Pharaoh refused to let people go. There is that reciting, that there is that oral recitation of how the Jews became a nation. And so the question is, how do we do the same thing in the African American community, where there is a recitation of the story? Because that's one of the things that we have in common. That is one of the stories in the Bible, maybe one of many stories in the Torah and in Holy
Well, it's really the core story in the Torah is that we were slaves in the land of Egypt, and through God's strong hand we have been liberated. And the entire discussion of laws, of commandments, is certainly in Leviticus and in Deuteronomy, is constantly to remember this, not to oppress the stranger, because you were a slave in the land of Egypt. You should be holy as God is holy, because you were a slave in the land of Egypt. This theme comes back again and again. We are to never forget that legacy. We're not to be ashamed of the legacy of slavery. But if anything, it is a distinct reminder of the need to be compassionate, to fight for justice, to make sure that others are not oppressed, to be bonded with those who are suffering oppression, as we, back in our history, have suffered oppression.
Start out with God saving the order. Probably the Ten Commandments starts out with
And now your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt.
taking you out of Egypt.
Yes.
Thank you, Deacon.
Bondage.
Not that I have a Pamela June Anderson book club like Oprah, but the book has been recommended to me, Sister Brian, and I've just started reading it, The Warmth of Other Suns. And it is the story of the migration of people from the South to northern cities. And Sister Brian, I just realized that the author is really listening to her mother's stories. It seems to me either her mother or her grandmother. One of them, she's recalling much of this information as she's doing her research. She's remembering the stories of her mother and her grandmother and her aunts and their uncles as they made the decision to come north during a time when lynching was commonplace and Jim Crow was at its height. And I may add parenthetically that though the for white only signs are down at water fountains and at restaurants and at bathrooms, though the written sign is down, somehow it is still written in the heart of human beings. And we saw that. We saw that during the re-election of President Obama. We saw it through his entire administration 4 years before, and we're seeing it in his administration now, to the tune that people from 12 states are seeking petition to secede from. It's up to 20?
Yes, but happily, the city of Austin, Texas, has asked to secede from Texas. And if you've been to Austin, that's no big surprise.
No, not at all.
But this thing of racism runs deep.
Yes.
And racism, from the United Church of Christ point of view, is the parent of all of the other isms, whether it's denominationalism or sexism or homophobia, whatever the ism is, classism, particularly classism, racism is the parent of them all, because that's where it starts.
Now you're talking specifically in an American context or globally?
I was speaking of the United Church of Christ context.
Yeah, but I mean, the United Church of Christ, are they saying that specifically to the United States, the American experience, or as a universal principle around the world throughout all time?
I'm thinking that it's around the world for all time. I wouldn't swear to that. But you're saying you don't think so?
When you do anthropology courses, if you were to widen out to the phenomenon of scapegoating, you might be onto something.
Yes, yes.
But to locate it explicitly to racism, I don't think I'd go down that path. That is, I would not go.
And what do you think the parent of all the other isms are?
Oh, I have too weak a mind to go. Yeah, but I do well remember the phenomenon of scapegoating showing up when I did a couple of cultural anthropology courses. It runs across culture, the notion of scapegoating, and then you pick your victim.
I see.
That's why actually I brought up the issue of race. I mean, whether it has to do with women, or with race, or with religion, or with whatever. People apparently need to see themselves against somebody else in order for them to feel something good about themselves. I think that's a terrible thing to say.
And you wouldn't think that it would happen among
Depends on xenophobia.
xenophobia, and you wouldn't think that it would happen among educated, intelligent, religious. It seems to me that the more
Well, the lesson of history is not
Yes.
quite so kind to those who have those virtues and privileges, I'm
Yes.
afraid.
Think of the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia. All educated, French-educated intellectuals who tried to take history back to the year zero.
And let's bring it closer to home. It has been said that worship time is the most segregated time in America. Whether that worship time is after the sun goes down or shortly after the sun comes up. Either way you want to take the sun, S-O-N, S-U-N, either way you want to take the sun. That when we gather in faith communities, it is the most divisive, divided, segregated, isolated, insulated time.
Well, it's true that when I go to worship, I'm completely among my fellow Jews.
Mhm.
So,
Yes. But this is a form of worship also. I think we're going to...
are you suggesting that maybe what we should do is intergroup worship experiences?
I think that would be wonderful, Rabbi.
All right, then let me make a plug. Next Monday night, at the Islamic Center of Greater Lansing, this is on Monday the 19th at 7 p.m., we're going to be doing an interfaith Thanksgiving observance. This has been a tradition in this community for many years now. And I'm going to be giving an address at the group, and we have representatives from several streams of Christianity, Islam, Baha'i, Hinduism, Buddhism, Christian Science, really a very wide spectrum of people coming together and worshiping together.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
I saw the mic being passed around. Was there another comment? Another question? If not, I would like to enter into a brief time.
Very brief, I say, yes.
Yes, down to less than 5 minutes. How time flies when we are doing the right thing and enjoying it. How about that? Not Egypt, but the Holy Land. What is the complexity? Some of the complexity. Yes, some of it.
We've got 3 more minutes.
Okay, between the Palestinians and the nation of the Jews, or Israel.
Oi.
Yeah. And how
Well-
in America can we help?
Well, I think we can start by helping by not doing everything we've been doing to make it worse. That it is such a difficult, painful, entrenched struggle that it is very easy for all of us to see in an extremely linear, good guy, bad guy, our side, their side kind of way. And this probably between, if we're going to dialogue between Judaism and the United Church of Christ, this is probably going to be the single most difficult discussion we're going to have. Because we both are painfully aware of the suffering, especially on one side of the green line. There are 2 sides of the green line. There are 2 narratives. There are a wonderful book I can recommend, Michael Lerner. It used to be called Healing Israel Palestine. I think the new version is Envisioning Israel Palestine. I forget, but it's the only person I've read who really is trying to nuance the reality that there are human beings who are on both sides of this issue who are suffering enormously, not because they want to eradicate the other off the face of the earth or keep them in occupation, but because they are caught in the middle of what has been a very entrenched, insoluble conflict, being fed by the flames of religious passions and being fed by the flames of geopolitical forces. We need to deflect, we need to engage, we need to dialogue, we need to cool it.
Now,
That's-
how does that have a positive, oh my goodness, we are.
Yes.
Well, we'll probably have to continue this another time. But we
Yes,
will-
it's right, it's
we
like
will
the soap
continue it.
operas.
Yes.
Tune in next
Tune in
time.
next time.
Yeah.
But now that we have it on film, well, that's where we will start.
Yes.
When we gather together again for another taping. Because what I am hoping we can learn is how we as African Americans, in this effort of bridging the gap between the African American nation and the Jewish nation, what we need to be talking about, what we may want to know, what we may want to do in terms of helping it become a church-wide, a united church-wide kind of a conversation that we can
Interesting.
continue
Yeah.
in future days. So please, please, please stay tuned for the next time that we gather. In the meantime, back at the ranch, we thank you for joining us. We look forward to visiting with you again and hope you will include in your daily prayers, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. We want to thank Brother Prince for the filming. We thank you, Deacon Melody, for helping out with passing around the tapes. We thank all of you for being here with us tonight and look forward to another time. In the meantime, next time, serenity.